Okay, let's talk about truth. An important topic, a good place to start any philosophy course. So let's begin at the beginning. Thousands of years ago, the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who said the following about truth. To say of what is that it is, and to say of what is not that it is not, is to speak the truth. Simple enough. But as with all things that are simple, maybe it's more complicated than it seems. So let's look at this bit first. To say of what is that it is to speak the truth. Who can disagree? Well, there are three elements here that we should look at. First of all, as he says, to say of what is that it is to speak the truth. So what we're talking about is language here. It's language that is true or false. That's the first element. The second element is what is, that is the world, we could call it for now. When we're saying something that's either true or false, we're saying something about the world. So to say of what is that it is to speak the truth. So there's language and there's the world. And then there's the third element, the truth. And this seems to be some kind of relationship between language and the world. Okay? To say of what is that it is to speak the truth. So this is what Aristotle's theory of truth looks like, if we even want to call it a theory of truth, right? Maybe it's just our common sense idea of what truth is. But this is what it looks like. There's language, and there's the world, and there's this relationship between them. This relationship we can call correspondence. And so what we have here is a correspondence theory of truth. When our language corresponds to the world, what we've said is true. So here's our first theory of truth, the correspondence theory of truth. Again, seems simple, seems commonsensical. What could be wrong with it? Well, there's actually a lot, if not wrong with it, there are a lot of questions that it raises. So let's take a look at these, and we'll look at each of these elements in order, or not in order, but we'll look at them one at a time. So let's begin with language. So are we talking about sentences here? Is this what's meant? Right? We describe the world using sentences, and so it's these sentences that are either true or false. Good place to start. But again, perhaps it's more complicated. After all, look at the following three sentences. The sky is blue. Close the door. What time is it? It's only the first of these, which is a declarative sentence, which can be either true or false. Sometimes the sky is blue, sometimes it's not. So sometimes that statement is true, sometimes it's false. But close the door is a request or a command. It's neither true nor false. And what time is it is a question. It's not true and it's not false. You can refuse to obey the command and not close the door. And answers that you give to the question, what time is it, might be true or false. But the question is neither true or false. The command is neither true nor false. So if what we're talking about are sentences, it's only this first kind of sentence, these declarative sentences, which are said to be truth apt. That is, they can bear a truth value. They can be either true or false. Close the door. What time is it? Is neither true nor false. They're not truth apt. So that's one aspect here. If we're going to say that language is what's true or false, well, it's only a subset of language, which is true or false. But even there are complications. So let's look at the following sentences. The sky is blue, el cielo es azul, Himalayan air blah, and I don't speak Chinese, so I can't even pronounce that last one. But these all mean the same thing. They all mean that the sky is blue in different languages. What they have in common is their meaning. So we need to ask ourselves, is it the sentence that's true or false, or is it the meaning behind the sentence that's true or false? And another question, we'll talk about this in a future video, um, is are people who say these sentences, are they all having the same thought? These are different sentences because people speak different languages. But even though they speak different languages, are they thinking the same thing? And is it that thought that's true or false? We'll have to talk about this. Okay. So maybe it's not the sentence, maybe it's the meaning behind the sentence. Or maybe it's a belief that's true or false. Maybe it's a thought that's true or false. Maybe it's a mental state or a brain state or a proposition or a meaning. Um, these have all been suggested as candidates for what we'll call the truth bearer, right? So the truth bearer is the thing, whatever it turns out to be, which is true or false, right? When you speak about the world, if what you say corresponds to the world, then what you've said is true. Or it's maybe if, when you think about the world, if what you think corresponds to the world, then your thought is true. So there's this question of what the truth bearer is. Aristotle speaks as if it's a bit of language. To say of what is that it is to speak the truth, right? But maybe maybe he's wrong about that. Maybe the truth bearer is one of these other things, or maybe even something not on this list. So that's one issue here, and it's not to say this is, you know, wrong with the correspondence theory of truth, but as I say, it's a little more complicated than just to say that. Well, to say of what is that it is to speak the truth. So let's leave the question of the truth bearer aside for now and go over to this side of the equation. Um, the truth bearer corresponds to the world, presumably. But what is the world? Is the world made of things? So if I say the sky is blue, well, what my sentence or proposition or thought is corresponding to is the sky, right? So the world is made of things. Well, what kinds of things? Well, here's a list of possible things: an apple, the law of gravity, justice, and the square root of -1. Are all of these things in the world? Does the world consist of these things and many other things? These are all radically different kinds of things. Um, what does it mean to correspond to any one of these? This is a non-trivial sort of question. And here's a big problem with saying what it is that the world consists of. Back to Aristotle's claim, right? To say of what is that it is, and to say of what is not that it is not, is to speak the truth. Let's focus on this part. To say of what is not that it is not. Well, what is it that is not? Um, what does this mean? So, for example, if I say the sky is blue, I'm talking about the sky, and I'm talking about the blueness of the sky. If I say Harry Potter doesn't exist, what am I talking about? Well, it can't be Harry Potter because he doesn't exist. So what's going on here? Well, one possible answer, and this has been attempted, this is that, well, Harry Potter does exist. The fact that I'm referring to him, I'm thinking about him, means he does exist in some way. Maybe not as a physical object in the world, but as an idea or a concept or what have you. And so Harry Potter does exist. But then that makes this statement false. When I say Harry Potter doesn't exist, that's not true. And is it then the case that no matter what you put in here, is always going to be false? No matter what you choose for X, the statement X doesn't exist is always going to be false? That doesn't sound right. Certainly some things don't exist. We can still talk about those things, but that doesn't mean that they exist. So this is a non-trivial sort of problem for the correspondence theorist. What does it mean to say of what is not that it is not? Your language can't be corresponding to anything in the world because what you're saying is that, well, this doesn't exist. Now, this is not necessarily a fatal flaw. There have been solutions proposed, And in particular, we can add to our list of things that exist, well, things like situations and facts. In fact, maybe the world doesn't exist of objects, things and like apples and justice and the square root of 2 and the law of gravity. It exists of things like situations and facts. And so what is a fact? Well, if I say Harry Potter doesn't exist, what this truth bearer corresponds to is the fact that there is no Harry Potter. So it doesn't correspond to an individual, since that individual doesn't exist. What it corresponds to is the fact that that individual doesn't exist. And maybe the following example will clarify the distinction I'm getting at here. You can say, I see the apple on the table, and what you're seeing is an object, the apple. And we use a noun to refer, this is a noun phrase, right? Or you can say, I see that the apple is on the table. And then what the object of this verb, this see that, is this whole proposition, or what perhaps we should be calling a fact, right? So I see that the apple is on the table. And so the world doesn't consist of objects like apples. It consists of facts like the apple is on the table. This is one solution perhaps to this problem of referring to a saying of what is not, that it is not. Okay, so this is so far we've talked about the truth bearer. I guess I should have said this before, but so whatever it is that the truth bearer corresponds to, we'll call that the truth maker. And again, is it objects? Is it facts? Is it situations? There are different proposals here. So we have a truth bearer and a truth maker, and then this relationship between them, which I called correspondence. But then we have to ask ourselves, well, what is correspondence exactly? Is it reference? Does the truth bearer refer to the truth maker? Does the truth bearer point at the truth maker, right? I can point at an apple. So when I say that's an apple, is my thought somehow pointing at the fact of the apple in the world? Maybe. Or is it a matter of resemblance? When I say the sky is blue, do I have a little mental picture of the sky and it's blue? And so my mental picture resembles the facts of the matter, it resembles the actual sky. It's maybe rather difficult to say what correspondence consists of, especially when we think of, how do we correspond to objects that don't exist? So this is the correspondence theory of truth. And on the one hand, it seems very simple and straightforward and commonsensical. On the other hand, when you dig just a little bit into it, that simplicity seems to be an illusion. There's maybe a lot more going on here. What is the truth bearer? Thoughts, language, propositions. What is the truth maker? Objects, facts, situations. And then what is the relationship? Is it one of reference, one of pointing, one of resemblance? Various philosophers have defended various versions of the correspondence theory of truth. But I think it's enough to say here that it's not as simple and straightforward as it perhaps at first seemed. So in future videos, we will look at different theories of truth that attempt to address these concerns. Okay? I will see you in a future video.